Hello everybody. Today I want to chat a little bit about the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. After the chat I will also touch on what I'm currently reading, as well as I will do my drawing that I've been doing for my last few videos. As I'm winding down my must-read list, I'm letting the randomness of the universe choose my next read, so I will have the drawing for my next read also at the end of the chat. But this, the selected Canterbury Tales, this is a new verse translation by Sheila Fisher. Just a little bit of a rant to go on to begin with, though. The description of this electronic edition that I read, it was my understanding, was going to include the Middle English as well as this modern verse translation. And even in the copyright page of this electronic edition, it refers to the Middle English that's supposed to be in the book, but there is no Middle English in this edition. So this is published by W.W. Norton & Company in 2012. W.W. Norton & Company is a major publisher, so they really ought to know better, and I've run into this with electronic editions before. Fortunately, I was really happy because the footnotes were hyperlinked, and the footnotes worked really well, but there was no Middle English, and you know, I just don't know. Sometimes it seems like the major publishers are worse about this than small publishers. But nevertheless, I did enjoy reading through the tales. I studied these. My high school did a little component on the Canterbury Tales. Although we didn't really read many of the tales, I was trying to think. You know, I know we read the Knight's Tale and we read the prologue. I don't know what else we read. Because reading through them now, they're so I don't remember them, and I think I would have because they're pretty bawdy. Most of them are pretty bawdy, and you know, frankly, you know, sexually frank and stuff. And so I think I would have remembered that probably in high school. That would have probably caused quite a stir in the class. But so I don't think we really read many of the actual tales, but we did the Knight's Tales about courtly love, so it's kind of a safe one. And then I know we read the prologue. So and we studied the alliteration because, you know, this is a poem basically, and it's in a iambic, iambic. It's an iambic pentameter, I think it's called. It's got a certain rhythm to it, and I'll read an excerpt from it later. But why I read this, though, I picked this up as a thread from last year. I read this book last year called, let me just pull it up for you so you can see the cover, Chaucer's Tale, 1386 and the Road to Canterbury by Paul Strom. I absolutely love this really targeted biography of Geoffrey Chaucer in and around this year of 1386, which was a pivotal year in his life. And I did a chat on that. I'll link to the details of the chat below. But I swore after reading this biography that I would pick up the Canterbury Tales and read them because I had not had any exposure to them since my high school days, and even that was very limited, as I just described. So I put the Canterbury Tales on my must-read list for this year, and I'm so glad to have got them read. So if you're not familiar with the Canterbury Tales, what they're about, they were written in the 1380s, like I said. They are in, therefore, a different English than what we speak. They're written in Middle English, which is understandable to us if you really try, but it's pretty distant from us. But the story is they're pilgrims going from London to Canterbury on a pilgrimage, and they decide to have a sort of a contest on the way to Canterbury to each tell a story, and then the tavern owner who started the whole game that's accompanying them will be the judge, and then whoever wins, I think, gets a free dinner or something when they get back. So they set out on this journey. You know, obviously it takes a while when you're in 1390, 1387, 1386, to get to Canterbury on foot and on horse. So they each tell their tale, and basically that's what the tales are about. So we have here we have a prologue, the general prologue, which tells the story of how they're starting out on their journey. Then we have the Knight's Tale. Then we have the Miller's prologue and tale, and the Reeve's prologue and tale. A reeve is a Middle Ages term for like an administrator. Then the Cook's prologue and tale, the Wife of Bath's prologue and tale, the clerk's prologue and tale, the merchant's prologue and tale, the franklin's prologue and tale, and a franklin is a non-aristocratic landowner of the Middle Ages in England. The pardoner's prologue and tale, the prioress's prologue and tale, and then the prologue and tale of Sir Topas, and the prologue and tale of Mileby, the nun's priest prologue and tale, and the parson's prologue and tale. That's what was included here. So, the tales all, several of the tales, I'm not going to go into each one of them, but the Knight's Tale is kind of his tale of courtly love. Quite a few of the tales actually revolve around marriage and love and romance and infidelity and this type of thing. They're all quite, really quite engaging and entertaining and feel really pretty modern. There is, medieval references I'll talk a little bit more about eventually, especially kind of like how they swear, which I found so kind of amusing. But a lot of the things the references that they make are maybe works that we don't necessarily aren't too familiar with today, and so that's why this edition that I read was kind of nice for the footnotes, because it did, give me definitions and give me kind of context for some of the terms that I wasn't familiar with. But sort of my experience with it, the tale that I really wanted to kind of draw attention to is the Wife of Bath. The Wife of Bath character, her name is Allisyn, and wow, she's quite a character. She is sort of unapologetically herself. She takes no guff from men whatsoever. She seems to really kind of dominate her husbands. She's had quite a few husbands too. She says at one point that her body, I think, this is a paraphrase, but her body's ruled by Venus and her heart's ruled by Mars, because she's also you get the idea, she's very sort of physical and sexual, as well as sort of domineering with this Mars aspect in her heart. And she thinks that a key to a happy marriage for her is to be able to dominate her husband, and then some of the other tale-tellers have different views on what's a happy marriage, but that's sort of her view of it. I wrote down a quote from her, because not only is this quote kind of descriptive of her and her sort of character, but it also really, if I can read it right, it'll kind of show you the rhythm of the tales. So it says, for God so wise is my salvation, I have never loved in moderation, but I have always followed by appetite, should he be long or short or black or white. I took no heed, so long as he liked me, of how poor he was or of what degree. So, yeah, she says she's never loved in moderation. She uses scripture really to justify really her sexuality, and her justification. She goes through this sort of justification of it, and basically it boils down to, she's using what God gave her, so there's no problem with that. So I enjoyed the Wife of Bath's tale very much. I mean, actually, quite a few of the tales. The only one that kind of really surprised me was the prioress's tale. The prioress, her tale was quite anti-Semitic. It was a little Christian boy that's murdered by Jews. So yeah, that one kind of took me by surprise, because I don't think I was really expecting that sort of anti-Semitism in the tales. But yeah, so some other kind of thoughts. I mentioned about some of the medieval terms. I got quite amused by the swears. So they swear like. They seem to swear by God's body parts, like by God's bones, or by God's arms, or to saints. Like I wrote a couple of them down, because there's saints that are so medieval sounding. By Saint Friedeswide, or by Saint Elgius, or by the good Saint Cuthbert. And then we had another time it said, by God and Saint Jacobus. So we had two. We had by God and also by one of the saints. Another one was, oh, Christ's blood and nails. Christ, blood, and nails. That seems like quite a kind of a swear. Christ, blood, and nails. So yeah, I really found that kind of amusing too. Those kind of I need to really try to incorporate some of those swears maybe into my life because I kind of like that. By God's bones. And then another thing, the translator Sheila Fisher, she starts out with an introduction, and she's talking about how she wishes that the Canterbury Tales had more like resonance within the general culture today, maybe like Jane Austen does or William Shakespeare does. She talks about how every time she was turning around when she was developing this, working on this, that there was a new adaptation of a Jane Austen novel or a Shakespeare, some kind of connection to Shakespeare in the sort of the modern, mindset or the current culture, and she really wondered why the Canterbury Tales didn't really quite have that same resonance. And so what I thought of though was the Brönte Wuthering Heights. I thought of the song Wuthering Heights from Pat Benatar from the 80s. Anybody remember that? Heathcliff, it's me, it's Kathy, I've come home. So I was like, Pat Benatar never did a song on the Canterbury Tales. Kate Bush also did a version of Wuthering Heights. But so I don't know how The Wife of Bath would fit into a rock song like that. But it really is kind of a shame that the tales don't seem to resonate with the current culture. Maybe as much as some of the other really older works like Shakespeare from a couple of hundred years later, but still. So I thought that was fun. I was actually humming "Wuthering Heights" by Pat Benatar, because that statement was in the introduction, and then I had that song in my head for like the next day or two when I was reading this book. I kept thinking about it. So, all right, well, I'm going to stop at that. I'm going to stop the chat with the Canterbury Tales there. I'm really glad that I did get it read. Now I've read a mini biography of the year 1386, which is about the writing of the Canterbury Tales. I've actually read the Canterbury Tales, and now I want to read a book about the Canterbury Tales. So that will be coming up sometime. Maybe I'll get to it next year. So anyway, what I'm reading now, I'm reading Stars Between the Sun and Moon, One Woman's Life in North Korea and Escape to Freedom by Lucia Jang and Susan McClelland. This is a memoir of a woman who escaped from North Korea, and it's sort of her struggles right now. I am still in her childhood, although I do think I probably will get this finished tomorrow. It's not that long, but so far it's really engaging, and it's been a lot of hunger. So hunger seems to be an ever-present thing in her childhood. So that'll be finished soon. Now for my next work, let's just do a drawing to see what it's going to be. Whoop, which one flew out? Siddhartha. Siddhartha. This is by Hermann Hesse. Let me see if I can find this. I may not be able to find this book cover real fast. I have already bought this book though, and I did buy it electronically. So let me just see if I can find it. The one I chose, might not be able to find. Oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, it's not a very pretty cover. This is a modern library electronic edition. Siddhartha, an Indian poem by Hermann Hesse. I've been looking forward to this a lot. I've been reading, chipping away at Hermann Hesse. This is my Hermann Hesse for the year. I've read Steppenwolf, and I also read Magister Ludi, the Glass-Bead Game, twice. So I'm happy to get to Siddhartha finally. So I should have this done. I will get this read after I get the North Korean woman's memoir finished. So I will end with that. Until next time, take care. Bye.